Hey everybody, welcome to Spill the Novelty, where three girlies shout into the void about our latest book, hot takes, and obsessions. I'm Abby,
I'm Maddie.
And I'm Kaylee.
and this week we're spilling the tea about The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, an adult fantasy novel by Carissa Broadbent. If you read The Serpent and the Wings of the Night and are as crazy about Rain, or Vincent, as we are, here's the tea.
All right, so if you haven't read this book, we start out kind of with the aftermath of the madness at the end of book one. Uriah is hating Rain for murdering her father, and the Rishan people don't respect Rain because they still view him as a slave. And then Uriah finds one of Vincent's magical objects, which allows her to communicate with Jasmine, who was Vincent's assistant in book one. So we learn that there's like a Hiaj resistance forming against the Rishan kingdom. And then Rain makes a deal with Uriah to get her to work with him against the Bloodborne. In return, she will be free from the kingdom and everything. And then we find out that Uriah is not only half vampire, but also that she can fly.
And then there's a giant uprising led by Simon, who actually is like one of the people that originally tortured Rain back when he was a slave. And Karis, who's just a different Rishan noble that was working for Rain. So he was kind of like an inside mole person. And then Septimus, who is the leader of the Bloodborne house, vampires, whatever. Araya and Rain get taken prisoner. But Araya escapes using the Taker of Hearts, which is originally Vincent's all-powerful magical sword. She helps Rain escape, and then he gives her Vincent's journal, which has information about her mother. He's done like a whole bunch of like side research to find out all this stuff. And then Rain gives Araya the opportunity to leave him and be free, and she chooses to stay. They fall back into lovey-doveyness with this like big show of affection. And we love it. Then Araya and Rain go and join Jasmine's resistance. They end up going back to the castle to fight with kind of like this hodgepodge army of Hiaj soldiers, Rishan soldiers, and also some humans, eventually. But Araya gets badly injured, and Rain ends up bringing her to the human districts based on a letter he found that leads them to Araya's aunt, which is actually then where the humans come in. So...
Yep, and through her aunt, we learned that Araya's mother was an acolyte of the goddess Acacia. We'll see if I pronounced it right, but through Acacia. We also learned that Araya's mother and Vincent were working on something together involving magic, and Araya's aunt gives Araya a bracelet that ends up revealing a map, which is a very cool scene. Then there's a massive battle between Jasmine's crew, the humans that join the resistance, and Rain against the kingdom. And meanwhile, Araya explores the cave where the map leads her to and learns about her parents' past. We get Vincent's point of view of meeting Araya for the first time during this whole situation, and it's very, I think, emotional for Araya, or just, this very big moment in her realizing her relationship with her father. And finally, Araya gets the blood of the god who was married to the goddess Nyaxia from this cave. So then Araya finds Rain as he dies from battle. She offers the god blood to Nyaxia and tries to make a deal for a Coriatis bond.
Mm-hmm.
Close enough. To save Rain's life, but Nyaxia declines. So Nyaxia instead hints that she cannot be the one to grant the bond, but someone else can. So Araya calls up Acacia and instead gets the bond from her, which then saves Rain. And is this big moment at the end of the book.
Mm-hmm. And they live happily ever after.
Surely.
Episode. Join us next week.
Okay, so let's kind of get into the characters, and we'll start with Araya. Or Araya. I think you guys say Araya, so I'll say Araya too.
This is audiobook pilled.
Yeah. So she evolves a lot in this book. Like, we find out she can fly, like we mentioned earlier. We also find out that she likes the taste of blood now. So she becomes kind of a little bit more complex in this process. So what did you guys think of Araya and kind of like the way she evolves throughout the book?
I really like watching her growth in book two. I I already see the shaking head. But I really liked her growth in book 2. Especially, I think, her evolving feelings kind of about herself and Vincent, and mostly herself. Like, I just liked seeing her own kind of growth into her role as heir, and also just kind of discovering her own power. I think that she is a character who balances her kind of emotions well and spends some time really like thinking about her past, all while still being a very powerful character and a great fighter. And I also like that her relationship with Rain is, again, a slow burn in this book. I think that it's pretty clear that it's because of the trust that they built up is then lost for much bigger reasons. I think maybe even in book 1, she's watching Rain murder her father and completely kind of shatter her expectations from the first book. So yeah, I liked following Aurea.
Yeah, I agree. I think like the slow burn was definitely necessary, and I think it was handled well. But I don't really, maybe this is like a hot take early on, but like I don't really think Aurea changed that much. She all of the complicated feelings that she had about Vincent were pretty much the same as in the first book, like at the core, which is like he loves me, but he kind of sucks, but he loves me. I know he loves me. That was the entire second book for me, is just her kind of going over these same kind of thoughts of like and it was also the same with Rain, by the way. It was like, oh, I know he cares for me, but there was just a lot of like parallelism, and I don't really feel like it changed that much. And I don't really feel that she landed in a solid place at the end of the book with her feelings about Vincent in a meaningful way that meant like she felt any differently than still kind of like holding those two things together. But that being said, I really like Aurea as a character. I love that she's like just very obviously the more powerful of the pair between her and Rain. I think this is like the best example I've seen in a book of like where that dynamic is actually pulled off, and it's not just like the guy being like, oh, but you're the best to me, like they always it always just like doesn't quite get pulled off, but here I think it's pulled off really, really well. And she genuinely just has like a lot of power for whatever reason. So and she has a lot more confidence in herself. That's the one way that I think she did change. She built a lot of confidence. But I don't think like emotionally she changed very much to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's realistic though. Like I think that if I were in this situation and I had a parent who murdered a bunch of children and did all these really horrible things, like I would still feel probably like love towards them in a way. And so I think that I would also be at kind of a crossroads of like, oh, Vincent's a really, really bad guy. And I recognize that, but I also recognize that he loved me. And so it's like a conflict. And I don't think she would probably realistically like ever resolve those emotions in her head. So I empathized with that, I guess. But as far as the confidence point you made, I agree that she became a lot more confident. One part that I really liked was when Karis like set up an outfit for her, and it was like a dress, and she had the option to wear that like top piece to cover like not only her bites but also her air mark. And she decides like, no, I'm gonna be a badass, and I'm gonna wear this dress and not wear this top piece, and like show off these bites that I've had, and show off my air mark. And I don't know, I really liked that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As Rain would say, there she is.
There she is.
There she is.
Oh, that is cursed. Too many times, bro. Drop it.
Oh my God. So many times. Especially, why was it so often in the beginning too? It was like, it was like 10 times in as many pages. Like, girl, it was
drinking game, but it's just how many times, drink every time that Rain says there she is.
You're alcohol poisoned. You don't even make it to half the book.
Bonus sip if Aurea makes another play on words about that, of like saying there he is or something, because she does that.
Yeah,
too. I'm like, girl.
She does. Every instance. I highlighted every instance on my Kindle so that I could just be mad about it every time and be like, I'm just so you're aware, I'm noting this. Compared to
a running count of that later. Like, I need to know.
Compared to the other thing that they have that they say all the time, which is the one honest thing, which was actually good.
I like the way,
It was really good. It was not overdone. She saved it for emotional moments. You know, it wasn't just like, what do you want for dinner? One honest thing, Araya. Like, girl, shut up. I hated it. Anyways, sorry, that was not relevant. Carry on.
That was funny. Okay, what about Rain then? How did you guys feel about Rain throughout the book?
I love Rain. Okay, I think I felt about Rain the way you guys felt about Araya. I feel like Rain had so much more like personality and depth in this book, especially in the beginning. The like first third of this book, as y'all know, was extremely difficult for me to get through. I just thought it was such like a slodge. Like not a lot was it was so much like introspection about things we'd like honestly discussed to death in the first book, in my opinion. And like a lot, anyways, that being said, like Rain's parts where he was like managing things and like or thinking about his past, it was like such a relief to me when it came to like a Rain chapter in the beginning, because I was like, okay, at least something will like be happening, or I'll be learning some like new information that's interesting, not just reading like another chapter that's like, oh, Rain is so hot, but he killed my dad. But also my dad was kind of shitty, but like I loved my dad. Like
she never did the Rain is so hot thing. That's from
She
Fourth
absolutely
Wing.
did. She absolutely was like, oh, when I look at him, I feel such a way that I hate myself for feeling this way. Like she absolutely like would look at him and be like, he looks so good. And she didn't say those words.
I do not think it was that bad. I think in Fourth Wing, when we had Violet being literally like, Xaden is so hot, like that was annoying. But I think this was said a little bit more gracefully, at least.
Well, yeah, but it was the same pretense. Like, oh, I love him, but he killed my dad, but he blah, 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 blah. Anyways, that being said, it was more graceful than Fourth Wing. Yes, I agree. Which is why I hated it a little less than Fourth Wing, but it also went on a lot longer than Fourth Wings did. So, yeah, I just really liked Rain in this book. I liked his, like, dimension, and also... I know y'all are going to disagree with this too. I liked that it revealed that like he's made several like terrible, awful decisions, because to me, I'm like, surely people will see that like this is just what vampire life is like, and Vincent is just a guy, but didn't work.
No, but I don't disagree with that. Spoiler, we're getting to the Vincent part in a minute, but I think that we learn a lot about Vincent, but I don't feel like Rain's a good guy by that sense either. I think that this book is showing like in war, yeah, they're vampires. This is war. This is like, I don't think any of them really have. I know that Aurea could come across as having like this like moral high ground, but like at the end of the day, she's a murderer too. Like I think that we'll get to Vincent, but anyway, I agree. I think that like it's good to know that like Rain is we see him as a more, I think, complex character in this book. And I like seeing him step into a leadership role and all the complexities that come with that of like, he has a lot of insecurities as a leader. He has a lot of fears as a leader. Mm-hmm. He wants to do well by certain people, but he also, there's a part of him, I think that, wants revenge, and he acts impulsively, or kind of impulsively sometimes, like with the whole beheading scene and stuff like that. Like the advisors close to him are like, why did you do that? Don't do that. And so I think that we see Rain's growth because we get to see a lot of those motivations, but also those kind of like shortcomings that he himself acknowledges of like, but yeah, so I said the same thing. I really like Rain a lot in this book. I do miss some of the fun kind of cutesy, well, we still get the banter and like flirtiness from him, but like obviously the situation's just different here. Like
Aurea is just like not in the mood for a lot of the banter to happen. Like he tries and she's like, go kill yourself, and he's like,
like when you kill my dad, don't try to right now, like so I also like Rain a lot in this book, but
I kind of disagree with some of those points. I don't know. I found him a little bit less interesting in this book, just because I kind of hate when we get a male POV. That's kind of a hot take. I sort of hate it because it takes all the mystery and allure that we have, or I shouldn't say male, I should say love interest. So whenever you have the love interest POV, all the mystery's kind of taken away. We know what they're thinking. There's no like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but I do still think that he's one of my favorite love interests I've ever seen. Like, I like how we get his backstory a little bit, and I like how we hear about him being turned because that did add some depth. I also like that at least I think he's trying to be a good person. Like, he's trying to save the humans in the human district. Like, he's trying to make these little efforts to be good. Or like, we'll get to this later, but when they go to Lahore and he has the option to drink the human on the table, and instead he like puts her out of her misery. Just little efforts to try to be a little better, I guess, which I feel like we don't see that from Vincent at all. Of course, he died, so we don't really have the opportunity to see if he would have been better.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just feel like they're different, like morally.
I just think, like, when it comes to Vincent, we have to remember that good is a subjective thing. So we're viewing this from a human perspective. So we're obviously going to like that Rain does these things for humans, and he's a turned vampire. So he has a very different perspective to other vampires. What we know also is that before Vincent was Neculi, is that his name?
Yes.
Rain's master.
It sounds funny now. It sounds like nucleus.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, this sounds like an bio term.
Yeah. But he was like pretty objectively awful and like wretched as a creature, and Vincent is the one that took power from him. And you can remind me if I've missed something, but I think Vincent had notably like less slaves and things of that nature. And I wish we had gotten kind of more of a comparison, because I genuinely think we get many pieces of dialogue that Vincent took power not just for power, but because he wanted to make change for his people and put them in a better position against the king that was in place then. So it's like, it's an iterative process, you know what I mean? Like, you know,
get a little better every time. Yeah.
Right. And like, he has no reason to have any love for humans. Like, he just wasn't raised that way, and that doesn't make it right. But like, I think Rain has an advantage in that he has like that different perspective, and obviously it gives us like a lot of love for him. But like, Vincent was also trying to be a good person, I think.
I also think that that's a fairly, like, without getting too much, I think the point about him being turned and having a different perspective, I think that is a huge, like, a massive difference there. So but
also, if I can ask real quick, what did you guys think about, I felt like this book was so heavy, particularly for Rain, on parallelism, because he is constantly comparing himself and trying to be Neculi, or Nucleus, Mr. Nucleus. And then, but also we get so many unraveled parallels between him and Vincent, both from Rain's point of view and also from Araya's point of view, where it's like, Vincent treated me like this and Rain's doing the same thing, or like whatever. Like, there's so much of that, especially in the beginning. She even says at one point about Rain, it's like, it's a line that was like, he's talking as the king now, but then he turns to me and he talks as something else, which is something she said all the time about Vincent. It was so heavy. Did you guys notice this?
I did notice that. Yeah.
I didn't, but I'm glad that you point that out, because I noticed in the sense of like, I would say maybe not parallelism. I didn't pick up on that. I picked up on a lot of like Rain, again, kind of his maybe insecurities or just like fears as a leader. So he's looking to past examples of like what he doesn't want to do and like how he's trying to establish himself as something different. But I didn't notice that about the line with Vincent, but that is cool, because I totally remember that from the first book. So that's cool.
Yeah, I thought the comparison was really interesting. I think it just made Vincent seem that much worse, which I think we're supposed to get. Like, I agree with you, Maddie, about a lot of your points. I just think we're supposed to hate Vincent, because that's the only way we can forgive Rain for killing him. Like, Carissa has to write Vincent as this really bad guy and has to compare them and make him seem bad. Otherwise, we would think, Rain's awful for killing Araya's dad. That's her dad. So
I do think that Carissa feels that way.
Yeah.
Because Araya feels that way the entire novel, and in my opinion for no reason, because y'all know there is no bigger Vincent stan than this bitch right here. Okay, I love that man. I stan that man. And I'm not mad at Rain at all for killing him, because like vampires are gonna vampire. What was he supposed to do? Like keep him locked up in a dungeon? Like,
Yeah.
okay, like it be like that, man. But I did feel like the parallelism was a little heavy-handed for me. It kind of slogged up the first part of the book. I think that's why a lot of it felt so redundant, is because it was so much like we're getting this same relationship over and over. They're doing these things and they're like, this is just like when Vincent did it. This is just like when Neculi did it. Like, and it's like, okay, I get it. Like, I get it. You're a king. Like, you're gonna do king stuff sometimes. Like, I feel like we could chill a little.
Yeah.
But it could have just been me like being super sensitive to that, because like if Abby didn't even notice it, then it probably like wasn't that bad. But it just added to the slog.
I think you're right too, that the pacing of the beginning of the book just felt a little off, and it's a lot of just like spending time in their heads, right? So no, I agree on the redundancy point. I just hadn't picked up the specific like parallel lines. That's cool. So yeah.
But we can talk about their relationship together, Araya and Rain. I think this is something we all agree on, so this will be fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, Kaylee.
I loved like how realistic the slow burn was for this book, and I actually think Iron Flame, when that comes out, will have a similar dynamic, because like after a huge betrayal, you're not supposed to forgive them right away, you know? So like Rain had to grovel for Araya's love, and she hated him, like really felt, well, not really, she loved him deep down, but she like outwardly hated him. And so, yeah, I thought the banter was also really good. Like, I loved all their cute little moments, especially like when he calls her princess and he gives her little like sarcastic comments. I thought that was really cute. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I liked the slow burn. I think it was handled really well in terms of giving them just the little tiny moments of rebuilding trust that lead up to the big moments, because I think in a lot of books it's kind of like, even if they stay apart for some time, you get like this one big scene where like it all kind of like comes uncorked. And I just feel like it's way more realistic to have these little tiny scenes where he shows kindness and she notices, and like he does something for her and she notices, and like just these like little bits and bobs that slowly kind of like rebuild that foundation to where not even just she feels comfortable with him, because he also has to feel comfortable with her, that he can like, because he has a whole kind of issue where he's like, I'm not good enough for her, like she's better, blah blah blah. So he also kind of has to like come to terms with like, she's not fragile, she can make her own choices, like it's okay if she chooses to stay with me, like I just need to respect that and like chill. So I think that was done really well.
Yep, agreed. Love the groveling.
Yes, I love a groveling man.
Make him work for it. That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, make him work for it. And I also like too, something I liked about book one as well, is that I feel like sometimes when you have like it's like an enemies to lovers type situation, at some point, the lovers aspect kind of trumps whatever conflict they had. Like they're just willing to put some of that on pause, or like they end up taking a certain side. I think that, and I guess you could kind of say that at the end of this book, because by the time they're bonded, he's technically like a king of the House of Night, right? I think they say that at the end, the king and the queen of House of
Night.
Yep. He's bonded to her. Okay, so but anyway, what I was going to say is I like that in both book one and book two. I think that you still have to, even when they build that trust, they still have to look out for themselves, their own people. Like, you still can't fully trust their motivations, but it's because they have other loyalties too. And I think that they kind of maintain that throughout this book, which I really like. So yeah, agreed. I like the groveling, and I like that it's complicated. It's not just like, super easy. He has to work for it.
Yeah. There was like a certain point in the book where it's like, it was probably around like 60% in. Okay, so we've essentially kind of like made up, and we're like an ally, like, the spice is boiling,
Yeah.
But like still she has these moments where like he does something and she's still like, he's my enemy, he should, why is he doing this? And I'm like, for the love of God, like I mean, like, how much does it take? Like, there's still like a part like near the end where she's like, he's my enemy, I should never let him do this, like I'm his sworn enemy. I'm like, girl, please, like, just, we don't have to do this every time. Like, get out of your own way a little bit. But like, it's on brand for her character. But I'm not gonna lie, I was like a little frustrated with her at some point because I was like, please, with this, like, we have so many other things to worry about.
I think if we're more than halfway through and that's still going on, then it's kind of like it's less believable because it's like, okay, well, clearly you guys are. But I think too, I want to say, was it Septimus who was trying to basically like make a deal with her at one point in the book, and she basically just tells him to fuck off. But like, I think she's like sitting there and like kind of, if I'm remembering correctly, like she doesn't really consider it, but you know, she's reminded of the fact that like she could easily, she could kill Rain and you know, be powerful in a different kind of way. And so even if she isn't really going to do it, I think it's still just interesting that dynamic still exists throughout the book of like, you know, they're powerful together, but they could also be powerful separately. So
and we're constantly reminded that she could be much more powerful than him, and like low-key that she is, because she constantly, he is literally like the damsel in distress, which I just find so funny. And like he also pokes fun at it like later in the book when he's like, oh, you might have to come rescue me again, and she's like, I mean, I might.
Probably, actually,
it's just very funny. But I really liked that he was the damsel in distress, and like earnestly so. Like even when she's fighting Elvinine, I don't know, her cousin,
Evelina,
who turns out to be like, I mean, low-key like weird and evil, whatever, but like she has to do the entire fight by herself. He literally shows up like at the end when it's over, and he's like, whoops, and he just like helps, you know, carry her somewhere else. But I like that it wasn't like he had to save the day all the time kind of a thing.
Agreed.
I also like that, like he trusts her, like he knows that she's gonna be okay. Like I like when he pushes her like off the tower, to make her fly, and she's like, how did you know that like I'd be able to? And he's like, I don't know, I kind of figured, but I didn't know, you know, like I didn't know for sure. And then he says something like, I would have caught you, but I'm sure you would have caught yourself, like
you'd never let yourself fall.
You wouldn't let yourself fall. Something like that.
And so I think he trusts that she's got it, like with fights and stuff. He's like, oh yeah, she could come save me, or like, you know, she could save herself, she's fine. And I really like that dynamic, because it's typically not like that in fantasy books. So
also something I want to bring up about that scene, which will lead us into our next thing, that scene was like a perfect way for Araya to realize something complicated about her father. Because when Rain is like, I pushed you because I knew you would be able to catch yourself, she has this moment where she gets really, really emotional, because she knows that Vincent also knew that she could have caught herself, but instead of pushing her, he chose to like shelter her, or, you know, depending on your perspective, he chose to like mislead her and kind of like tell her that she was helpless. And I think that's like a perfect way for Araya to actually come to these realizations and try to come to terms with these things, because Vincent and Rain, they have parallels, but they're very different in how they treat Araya. And I think that's more where the focus should have been on, rather than kind of like rehashing stuff constantly that like we've already kind of like talked about. But I think that scene in particular, I'm like, that was a really good way to do it.
The whole like her learning to fly scene, just for her own development and stuff too, was really good.
I agree. But that brings us to my boy.
On that note.
Vincent.
So we have Vincent. So one of y'all should probably start.
Go for it.
I can start. So sorry, Manny, but he's a bad guy. Like, he's a bad guy. We've already acknowledged this. Like, I think the scene where Evelina, sorry, Abby and I have acknowledged this. But where Evelina explains like what happened to her and how he murdered all of these children and all of their cousins, and just all of these children relatives. Like, it's really brutal and very descriptive, and we're supposed to get that Vincent's a bad guy. But I'll also recognize that he's a product of, like, what has happened to him. Like, it loosely mentions that Vincent's dad killed his brother when he was, like, as soon as he came out of the womb, basically, because he was a threat. And so Vincent has had a lot of trauma, and that makes him into a villain. So he's a complex villain. But I also teared up, like, at the end with that very last scene with them. Like, so even though I hate Vincent, I did tear up, like, with the scene where she was, like, saying bye to him, basically, just because it was emotional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just, like, regarding the Evelina thing, however you say her name, I'm just like, we already knew this. Like, hello? Like, I don't know what's going on. We knew he slaughtered his family, and then also, like, okay, yeah, I'm sorry that happened to her. Also, she's a fucking freak, and she's, like, a low-key a pedophile. So, like, I don't feel bad for her. But, like, also, when we get his perspective, I think it's, like, pretty quickly after that we get, like, the, like, interlude of, like, his inner thoughts of it. And he's, like, the only way that I can, like, justify it to myself and cope with it is if I say that all of their deaths are my father's fault. Like, I forget how he phrases it, but he's basically like, it's his fault that all of these people have to die. Like, it's his mistake kind of a thing. And so it's like, which I recognize is, like, mental gymnastics, but I just feel like, I don't know, I'm so confused about how it gets perceived this way when we get his perspective. And, like, he's just a guy. Like,
just a guy who murdered a bunch of children.
Yeah,
just a guy.
As did Rain. As did
Rain didn't kill any children.
Rain did not absolutely was responsible for the killing of many children. Just because he didn't personally kill children doesn't make him any less complicit in any kind of war crime. What are you
saying? Like, when was he responsible for the deaths of children?
He put Vincent in power, who actively he knew would wipe out Neculai's entire house, including the woman that he loved. He's just complicit.
I don't think he was responsible for that. He was just a slave, dude.
There's a whole chapter.
I think that's reaching.
What do you mean? Vincent used all of the what do you mean? What's happening?
Rain? Abby, back me up, girl. Abby, back me up.
Rain fed Vincent information for months about how to infiltrate the castle,
so
how to take over Neculai.
Directly responsible for Vincent killing people.
I was gonna say, but then if Vincent's the one doing the thing, like, I don't really.
How is Vincent not responsible for that?
I'm not saying Vincent's not responsible. I'm saying that, like, there's a lot more room being given to Rain for other crimes than, like, Vincent, who is just a guy. Rain is also just a guy. They're both morally gray, so Rain is also a villain.
I think the truth is, yeah. Well,
if Vincent is a villain when he doesn't do a damn thing this whole book to make anything worse, then Rain is also a villain.
Yeah, he's dead, so he can't really do anything worse in this book.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, in the sense that they're all vampires. Like, I think we made this point you brought this up in the first episode, which is true. Like, the good thing about these books is that the vampires be vampire. Like, they're very much they're violent. They are literally bloodthirsty. Like, they are vicious. But I think so. Actually, I have a genuine question. So at the end, when we get some of Vincent's, we see into some of Vincent's thoughts about him going to, I think, save Aurea's mom, right? Like, because we thought that he had intentionally killed Aurea's mom, and I think that we learned that isn't the case. But correct me if I'm wrong. He was going to kill Aurea, right? But I can't remember why.
Yes.
Well, because she
was a threat to him. Yeah,
that's just what vampires do to their children. Okay. Yeah.
See, and that's fine. Like, that's vampire behavior.
But
but
that's what is
but
driving
he's
me
evil.
crazy. No, he's not evil. This is the culture that he's in. And it's crazy to me that we're having this conversation because he's literally like, I'm going to go kill my child. He sees her and he's overcome with like love and like weakness essentially, and he takes her in, and people are still like, garbage man, like never had a chance. Like I don't understand because I
he
feel
did
like
one good thing. He did
he's
one
done
good thing.
he let Araya's mom leave too. No other vampire would have done that, and he knew she was pregnant with his heir, and he let her leave and left her safe for years. No other vampire would have done that. He has been weak since he fell in love with her. Weak. Vampire weak. Like
I'm gonna disagree respectfully.
I think the thing is, like, they're all vicious and everything, but I think part of it too is like having to ask, like, okay, yeah, like I'll grant that, like like the fact that he let her go and stuff like that is something that a lot of vampires would not do. Agreed. But I also think like his grace is very limited to things that he's selfish about. Like he loves Araya's mom, even though he has a hard time like admitting it because he doesn't like want to give up that part of himself. But so like I think that yeah, he'll protect her as insofar of like letting her go. He doesn't kill Araya, but I think that's about where any sort of like additional kindness stops. It's like these things are direct connections to him. The violence still continues. I agree with you that the vampires are pretty much all the same. But like I think part of that too is accepting like, okay, maybe he's not this great father. Like, I don't know. Anyway.
I don't know. I don't understand. I think I just don't get it. Like, Rain was literally willing to give up like the hope of his people to save Araya. Like, Rain is also almost solely interested. Like, when it came down to his people and Araya, he chose Araya, and he would choose her again and again and again, as he does throughout the book. Like, I don't know. I just think they're low-key the same. They're low-key the same. And I don't think he was like a good guy, but I think he was genuinely like as good of a father as anyone who had been through and had to survive and come out on top of the things that he had to, as he like could have been. I found it really redeeming to read the parts where he was like talking about his love for Elena, Araya's mom, which only made her like more mad at him, and I didn't really understand why, because I thought like it was all pretty reasonable. I don't know. And also I don't really think that like he hampered her development much. I think he pushed her as much as she could have been pushed at the time, and I also think she's like 23. She's literally an infant to him. Like I just think that he still viewed her very much as a child, and she did not have anywhere near. She grew so much throughout the trials and knowing how much to push herself. And I think if he would have like, sprung something on her in her at the beginning of the trials versus like her having survived the trials, it's a completely different woman in terms of like her confidence to handle things.
The only thing I'm gonna push back on that, because I do agree with a lot of, I agree that like Rain is not like this like on this morally high ground, right? Like Rain has done some messed up shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I will say to that end, we're talking about the same man who like taught her how to like murder, like stab someone through the heart at like what, 16? Like I don't think that I think he's protective of her, sure, but I do think that some of the things, like the thing about like flying and stuff, intentionally, and the good thing is like we're supposed to be sitting here having this conversation because you have to ask, like, was he protecting her or was he hindering her? Was he doing both? Like, I think if this is the same man who taught her how to put a like dagger through bone, and made her do it and watched her do it, I don't think that he's like afraid of her learning how to fly. Like, I don't know. I think if he thinks that she's young, then I think a lot of his hard training, and she said that he's a hard teacher. Like, I think that same logic should then apply of like, yeah, she's young, but I'm going to teach her to be tough, and including things like learning how to fly, like using her powers. So I don't know. I'm a little sus with that.
But then I'm honestly curious, why do you think he didn't teach her? Because you think he was genuinely afraid of her power? Then why didn't he kill her?
I don't know.
Because he loves her. It's complicated. It's complicated, but he does hinder her. He does, because
no, but yeah, sorry, Kaylee, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. He could at least let her know she's half vampire or his daughter, but it's because she's a threat to him. That's why he doesn't tell her. Like, that has nothing to do with her age, being able to say, hey, you're my real daughter. It's literally just because she's a threat to him. That's the only reason he didn't tell her that.
Like, and you said it too earlier, Matt, like, the fact that he kept her alive is unexpected. Like, I do think that there are parts of him, like, I will concede that I think there are parts of him that are good. Like, I do think he loves her. I still think if he's a vampire, then I still think he is a vampire in that he doesn't want to, like, because if she finds out her power, and I think we talked about this with some of the other heirs, like, they could easily, usurp the throne, like, kill him, done, like, you know.
Then why would he lead her to ask for the Coriatis bond, where she would inevitably become extremely powerful and inevitably find out all of these things that she's finding out now?
Because then I don't think that there's much of a motivation for her to, like,
she can't kill him. That's the idea, because if she kills him, she dies. So that was the whole reason behind it, is because he didn't want to die. He wanted to live forever as king.
Probably because he knows he can't keep those secrets from her forever. And if once she finds out, then he's done. Anyway, I think my favorite thing though is Vincent becoming our, like, main discussion.
Yeah, we gotta move on. We're taking way too much time on this.
Listen, poor our in total.
He's complicated, and just move on.
That's all I've been saying. He's complicated, not evil. That's all I'm saying. It's fine.
Moving on.
Our hot take for him is just Vincent. Just one word. It's Vincent. Let us know what you think about Vincent. We want to get into it. So anyway.
Yeah.
Let's move on to conflict.
Well, do we want to talk about Misha first, or do we just want to move on to conflict?
Yeah, we should talk about Misha. My bad.
Since she's the whole next book, if anyone missed that. True. She's gonna be the third book, the lead. And she's gonna be in the Shadowborn House of Shadow. I don't know if it's house. I don't know what it is. Shadowborn is
house. It's the House of Shadows, I think, and then there's the Shadowborn.
Yeah, and then there's Shadowborn if they're people that were born into that house.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I think. Okay.
So that's a pretty big deal. I love Misha. Like, even though we don't see her very much in this book, I think that she's like a light, like, throughout the book. She's good to have around. So I'm excited to read more of her in book 3 personally.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Misha. I just, again, for me, like, she just wasn't here enough for me to care fully about her. Like, every time she came in, like you said, it was a light. It was something really fun and interesting. She's such a good contrast to Araya and Rain in like every scene. But then she just goes away. Like, I don't know. And even, like, I mean, it was really interesting the way that she deals with, you know, being confronted with the vampire that turned her. And, like, I didn't expect her to just, like, flat out attack the man in the hallway. But then, like, that's the end of it. It's like 5 total pages of Misha, and then it's like she gets shoved back to the back burner. So I'm glad that we're getting her for a book 3, but I'd be lying if I said, like, I just honestly wasn't as interested as I could have been if she had been a more relevant character throughout either of these books, honestly.
Yep, agreed, 100%. She grew on me in this book. Again, like, she's very much like to draw a parallel, an Alice Cullen-y type character where she is this light, bubbly, fun presence, but is very much like, you get the sense that she's like this kind of tragic character in a lot of ways. But like you said, Maddie, like, I still don't think we got enough of her. And again, that's probably intentional since we're going to get a full book of her. Is it 2? Do we know? Or are they going to be treated like duologies?
They're all duologies, yeah.
Okay.
It's 3 duologies. So yeah, we'll have 2 books of her.
Okay. So I assume that it's very intentional, the way that they're, Carissa Broadbent's being very, like, strategic by withholding information about Misha. But yeah, same spot. She grew on me, but could have had more.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. All right, so now we move on to the big conflict / war. So what did you guys think of all the conflict in the war?
So much conflict, so much war.
So much conflict, lots war. I'll start off by saying too that like something we kind of talked about, and I think so. Like Kaylee, you like kind of like the war and like battle and stuff, and a lot of fantasy, right?
I do. Yeah. Okay. I wish there was more of it in this book. In fact,
really?
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I thought we didn't get enough of that. The war was like 20 pages or something, like this big battle. I'm like, we didn't get to hear about anyone else fighting except for Rain and Simon? ? Is it Simon? Is he the one that Rain's fighting?
Yeah.
Okay, those are the only people we hear about like battling.
But we had several little battles of like instances because we had
but I wanted a big at the end. I wanted that to be spread out a little bit more.
Finale.
Oh right. Yeah. Okay. No, I agree with that. I think something we kind of hinted at is like the pacing of the book, of the end of the book in general is just kind of off. So yeah, no, I can totally see that. But I'm not normally a big fan or like a huge fan of all the wars and shit. But I really like this one. I like that there was a lot of time spent discussing the various allies and kind of where different loyalties were and everything. I definitely got some parts confused different places, but I think that's pretty standard. Like even when it's well written, there's a lot of details, so you just got to kind of do your best to follow along and meld like the current story with previous history and yeah, I thought it was really cool to see kind of where Rain and Aurea, again, kind of showcase their own growth as leaders and as heirs, but also, yeah, lots of considerations about trust, who to not. Yeah, a lot of, and also something I noted too is the importance of like a lot of political kind of optics I thought was really interesting. So like the beheading, again, in the beginning where Rain kind of impulsively does this thing where like his advisors are like, why the hell did you do that? But in his mind, he's setting a precedent of like, don't fuck with me. You're going to trust me. Like you're going to at least respect me. And then the whole wedding, I'm forgetting the character's name, but the noble wedding where basically it's just to set up
Veil.
Yes. Veil's wedding, and like the wedding basically as a means to just is an elaborate way to just have this political conversation and form other alliances and stuff. So yeah, I liked it. I'm not normally someone who leans into all this, but I enjoyed most of it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also not like a war battle girly, so ironically, I feel like there was like just enough battling for me, like and I still even ended up skimming a little bit, especially at the end because like things were popping off, so I was like excited to get to like whatever the next thing was. So yeah, I really liked it. I liked the political intrigue. I really liked the concept of like, because we hear so much about like the Bloodborne in the first book, and like that they're wacky and crazy, and obviously like a lot of the first part of the book is dedicated to kind of talking about how it's really problematic that Rain is leaning on the Bloodborne so much. So I really loved the solution of kind of tapping into the Shadowborn kingdom and bringing them in as an ally, because they've kind of been able to kind of just like stand back and like hang out. I wish we had gotten a little bit more of that before the Misha thing. I'm happy that she killed him, to be clear. I just wish we had gotten a little bit more of like the Shadowborn kingdom, like getting a taste of what they actually can bring to the table and what they think about things. But probably that's being saved for Misha's book. But yeah, I thought it was really fun. I love a good like war strategy and like political strategy, like pulling of the threads and like trying to keep Septimus close, but then obviously he was too close, and like there's a mole, but like we got to figure out who the mole is, and we thought it was the wrong person. And I also really love, just as a side note, like Veil is like we mentioned, one of the advisors that Rain has, and they end up having like this like wedding celebration for him, and it's for him, and I think her name is Lilith ?
That sounds right.
It's an L something name. But anyway, she's a human that he like fell in love with and turned, and Rain is like very, very sus of it because Veil mistreated him when Rain was a slave. And so you kind of have this like very small redemption arc going on for Vale, where Rain talks to Lilith individually, and he's like, by the way, like, if you need an out, like, I'll get you out, like, I know what it's like, whatever. And she's like, no, actually, he's like really nice now. And so it's just a really nice moment, because we have so many characters in this book that have wretched pasts and have done awful things, but they're living for centuries. So I just feel like it's a very fresh take on like vampires that are growing over time and not necessarily all just like, I don't know, one dimensional. And that's like the war, the conflict, all of that kind of plays into it, because we have in the end, like this uniting of different kingdoms, and even the humans get to fight alongside I don't know. I like it. I was here for it.
No, I love that. I think that's a great take of, and I don't know that we get that in a lot of, well, I haven't read enough vampire like lit to say this, I guess, but I mean, I read the classics, you know, Dracula and Twilight. That's all I do.
Those are your cornerstones.
That's all I do. It's both ends of the spectrum. This is somewhere in the middle. Yep. I really like this idea of like a redemption arc, or just the idea that they can, you know, live basically forever, and they still can be people that evolve and change. And I think sometimes they're very stuck. So I think that's great. I really like that too. So how did y'all feel about another big aspect of all the conflict and everything was, of course, the god blood and like all the magical items that belong to Vincent that Aurea is seeking. Not just Aurea, but what did y'all think about that?
I thought it was cool. I liked mostly that it led us to the Vincent's kind of POV at the end, and then getting to learn more about Vincent and Alana. Is that her mom's name?
Yeah.
There's a lot of names to keep up with, but getting to learn a little bit more about them and their relationship, and Aurea kind of coming to a lot of realizations there at the end. So I liked all the magical items for that purpose. They weren't that important to me, like the amulet or the what is it?
You didn't care about the teeth, Caitlin?
I just didn't really care. I was just like, meh, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Same. I liked it for the lever that it was of revealing lore that we no longer had access to because Vincent was dead. But like the actual, I mean, I guess, and maybe I just like missed it. I didn't really understand fully why we were going to get the things, like what the aim was, what the end result would be, besides like that we didn't want Septimus to get it, which is, I guess, I mean, at one point Rain does, I think it's Rain that says like, I don't really know what it does, but I just know I don't want Septimus to have it. So, but for me, it made me care less about the actual item. It was just a lore tool for me, which is what I was really interested in. So, but I did like seeing like how magic actually works, because we don't get to see like a ton of that besides like the night fire and the asterisk and stuff in battle. So I liked getting to see that, and also getting like the little tidbit of like what Aurea's mother's magic was like, where she can kind of like bind things together, so that it's like if you're wearing a bracelet, a ring, and a certain necklace, like you get a map on the back of your hand. Like that's wacky. I want more of that. Like I love that, you know, like the enchantments.
That was very cool. Yeah.
And I think so I agree with y'all too of there are times where I didn't like see them as this like super hugely important thing to the story. Like I think that got a little lost for me. But one thing I did like was something we've kind of talked about previously, is that there's some gruesome scenes in this book and in the first book, which I like. It's vampires. Like, what do you expect, right? So I do like that, whether it's Vincent's sword and kind of the moment where Aurea actually like wields the sword, and you kind of see the pain that it puts. Is it Evelina? I'm forgetting.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. We're gonna go with it. Like that whole scene is pretty wild. The part where she gets, again, I think it's an amulet. Yeah. See, I'm kind of forget like what the specific items are, but that whole thing of like the heart and the wings is like really gross but really cool. So I do think that the specific scenes where we're kind of finding these magical items are very cool. Like just very vampire-y. But I think that's the most.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And that brings us.
Oh.
That does
Sorry,
bring us.
if you're watching
That
the
brings
podcast,
us.
I'm just ignore me.
That brings us to the goddesses.
Yes.
Yes. Which we have conflicting feelings about. So what did you guys think? What did y'all think about Acacia and Nyaxia there at the end?
So for me, for one, it felt way too similar to the ending of book 1, where it's like, you know, Araya comes out, Rain is perishing. She has to save him, so she has the god's blood at this point, and then she's like, well, instead of it being used as a weapon, how else can I use it? And then she's like, Nyaxia, come help me. And
that's exactly what happens verbatim.
Literally. And then Nyaxia's like, what the fuck do you want? And she's like, do you want your husband's blood? And I don't know. It just, and then Nyaxia was like, low-key, no, what the hell is going on? Like, y'all are so weird. And she gets mad, and then she kills Simon, who was like, I don't know. I wanted Rain to kill Simon for the arc of it all, and she just instantly like takes the man out, and you're like, okay, well, there goes like the big bad. Just instantly slays him, and then she's like, you're a loser. I don't want to do this, but like you could maybe ask someone else to do it. Flies away, and then Araya's like, oh no, what other goddesses do I know? My mother's goddess becomes summoned, because of course she does, and then she's like, can you do this crazy thing for me? And the goddess is like, I've never done it for anyone else, but why not?
I really liked in book 1, I really liked seeing Nyaxia. I like the fact that Nyaxia is kind of like petty. I think it's funny, but I also think it was kind of weird. I don't know. I just think, unfortunately, I do like getting the goddesses. I wish we would get them in a different context. I would love to get Acacia. Like, she seems like such a cool goddess. And I, again, would love to see Aurea explore, like, the side of her mother's kind of magic and things like that more. I just hate that this is the way that it was done, because it felt like a cop-out. And I totally forgot about the fact that Nyaxia takes out Simon. So there's another thing that gets magically resolved.
Instantly.
Yeah, I want to like it. I think that I would have really liked to get Acacia in like a different situation. And maybe we'll get her again. But unfortunately for me, this whole kind of goddess scene just was too much of a cop-out. It just solved all the different problems.
Too quickly.
Otherwise, I probably would have liked it, but yeah.
I liked it when I read it, but like hearing your guys' points definitely makes me like question like whether I actually liked it, or I think I liked that. I liked Nyaxia. Like, I liked her in the first book too. I like her personality and her backstory. So I think that's why I liked it. The Acacia part, I agree that it's a cop out, and I just didn't. I don't know. It doesn't add up really. Yeah. We don't know anything about her character or much about her backstory at all. So like, we don't know what would be in character for her.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree.
I also like, I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like, sorry, I'm distracted.
Sorry, if you're listening, having some various things that are happening on the platform we use.
Yeah, you'll have to go to YouTube to see what happened. That was very dramatic and distracting.
I apologize.
Okay, I've regained my train of thought. Okay, what I was going to say is, I really liked that when Nyaxia came, she was like, what the hell are y'all doing with my husband's remains?
True.
But then she was like, chill again. And I was like, that's not my Nyaxia. Like, my Nyaxia that I stan would have laid waste to like everything, right? Because she's ridiculous. So the fact that
give me that vial.
Yeah, she was even entertaining Aurea was like crazy, which like Aurea acknowledges. She's like, I actually don't have the power to do this, but like, I don't know. It was just like, I don't know. I was like, this is a little YA. for
I liked
me.
that Nyaxia was like, I'm doing you a favor because you are now you're the queen now. You're the sole leader. Like
true.
I did like that. I did think that was in character for her, but other than that, I agree.
Well, and I think it's funny too to go from book one where you have this entire, I'm saying this now, you have this entire like event or tournament or however you want to call it, a competition, that the entire point of the competition is to then win and get a wish from this goddess. So presumably you don't have a ton of interactions with this goddess. So you go through the entire Kajari to get a wish granted from this goddess, and then it's like in this book, Arya just has two goddesses on speed dial, just like
yeah, just by asking politely.
Like, so, yeah.
And I mean, I think too, that's a good point, Abby, because we should also point out last episode, oops, sorry, I knocked my mic. Last episode, we had a little bit of a disagreement because I think, Kaylee, you said you didn't like that they both got to survive because it felt like a little bit of a cop-out because, like, Nyaxia is kind of like a bad bitch. And, like, we were like, well, but, like, she loves to see the drama. But, like, again, she has this moment where I don't know, she's not as violent as she could be. And it's not that, like, I wanted her to kill them all instantly, but, like,
what if?
Is she more bark than bite? Like, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is, like, are you actually just, like, kind of a bitch?
I think she wants to see it play out. She wants to see all the drama that's gonna, like, ensue, but there is no additional drama that happens. But I think maybe that's the idea, is like she wants to see what plays out. I don't know.
See,
I don't know.
No, yeah, I think you're right. But the other thing too is because I think Aurea has this, I can't remember if someone talked to her about it or if she just realized it in her head that, like, Nyaxia doesn't want to end the conflict, which, like, falls in line with the idea of her just being petty and, like, but at the same time, like, the thought of Rain and Aurea having the Coriatis bond and, like, completely changing the political landscape, I'm like, that's also drama. Like, that's tea. If you want to see tea, let's see the tea, you know? But anyway, I don't know.
It could be. I don't know. I just think, granted, we don't know a lot about, like, the god and goddesses structure. I think it's absolutely wild to have, like, another goddess completely change the landscape of, like, the people that you rule. Like, that's a big choice.
Acacia just came in and said, all right, yeah, sure.
And the fact that Nyaxia kind of, like, hinted, like, you could ask someone else, but, like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? I don't understand. Like, did she think that she would be perceived as weak? Maybe because people would be like, oh, she's such a sucker for love. So, like, that, maybe that could be why. I don't know. It was I want more. I want to understand more. I need a novella of Nyaxia's POV.
Honestly,
I think there is a novella in this series, but I don't know what it is.
Wait, for real?
I think so. Hang on, I'll look it up real quick.
Fun lore. We had so much to say about the goddesses. Let's go.
Yeah.
A lot of feelings.
I want to like them. I just didn't like how they showed up.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Never mind. Forget it.
There is a novella, but it's not published yet.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see.
We'll see. Okay, so all that being said,
as if that wasn't spicy enough.
For real, it's time for the, believe it or not, the spiciest segment of the pod. We have our pour overs and our hot takes, if there are literally any left to share. So honestly, I can start just since part of mine have to do with the goddesses. So my hot take, everyone knows Vincent is my actual hot take. Okay. Everyone knows. I don't want to talk about it more. We're over it. We've moved on. My hot take is that Misha was, like, criminally underused in this book because she could have solved many, many problems. Okay. The first problem being that, like we talked about, the goddesses were so random. Misha should have been the door to Acacia for Aurea. Oh my God, their names are all so similar. Misha, Acacia, Aurea. Misha is a vampire that has a relationship not with Nyaxia, beyond just the fact that she's a vampire, but actually with Atraxis, because she was a priestess before she got turned. And she used to have powers from Atraxis. It was this whole thing. But I really wish that had been utilized as a way for Araya to look at Misha and say, like, Nyaxia isn't the only door, the only answer. And when she found out that her mom was a follower of Acacia, in my brain, I was like, okay, sick. Like, now Araya is going to go, kind of like research and look into Acacia and see like what this is. It's going to be such a big part of like her growth, because it's going to be her finding her roots and finding connection with her mom, all this good stuff. And it doesn't happen until the last like 4 pages. And then Acacia is just like, yeah, girl, I know you. Well, I know your mom. We good.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like it was like a huge missed opportunity that it could have made me care about Misha more. It could have made me care about Acacia more. It could have made me like Araya more, because she would have had a little bit more like emotional growth, kind of away from Vincent. Like I think she needed to find more of herself outside of like just having this complicated relationship with her father. So that's my hot take.
Agreed.
And then my pour over is basically just that I'm still trying to puzzle out like why the book pacing is the way that it is. The beginning was so long to me. The middle is so good. And then we get like this last little epilogue, both in this book and the first book. I just don't understand why it's being structured and written this way, like why these pieces of information are being deemed like so important as to like take some of the punch out of like the inner content of the book. So that's that. I'm just still pouring over it. I'm like, why, Carissa? There might be a reason, but I need to know why. That's
I think that was a criticism we had of this book and the first, is just like he's cut off a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
That was the calmest pour over and hot take segment I've ever had.
We got through the beef earlier.
We did. Vincent is everybody's hot take, but
yeah, that's true.
Okay, so my new hot take is that Rain should have died. So Carissa Broadbent teases us with Rain's death in the prologue and in the last book.
Oh my god, I forgot about that in the prologue, Kaylee.
Yeah, the prologue, she mentions like he says something like, when I died the second time, she'll be the end of me or whatever.
So, yeah, I think you're actually gonna get a death. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
so
that actually makes me angrier.
Yeah, I was so excited for him to die, because I love when main characters are killed off in books. It's one of my favorite things, and it'll give me like an automatic 5-star to a book if you can kill off a main character. Yeah. So I was so excited for that, and then she just doesn't. She lets him die once again just to be resurrected, and they had already said their goodbyes. Like they had some spicy scenes like together. They've had a conclusion already, so why not just let him die? I didn't get it.
Yep.
And then my pour over, I'm still kind of pouring over the Bloodborne curse that Septimus talked about a bit. Like he talked about his whole story, which was really tragic with his brother. So my prediction is that the third duology of this series will get a Bloodborne love interest, because why else are we introducing this curse and like all of this stuff about the Bloodborne if we're not gonna like really dive into it? So,
and in that book, Misha will summon Atraxis and say, please, my Bloodborne lover is dying in my arms, can you please heal him? And he'll say, no, I cannot. And then she'll say, Nyaxia, and then it'll be so
it'll come full circle.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So my hot take, again, our hot takes are, I think we agree actually on all of our hot takes. The first 80% of this book, well, actually, no, I agree with what you said, Maddie, of like the beginning of the book also is kind of slow. But I would say beyond that, could have jumped in a little bit more, I think. But I had the first 80% of the book I really enjoyed. The last 20% or so, it was not good. Again, to kind of reiterate, or not that it was bad, it it could have
Yeah.
just been so much better. Yeah, I won't reiterate all the stuff I said about the goddesses and stuff, but I just think it was very anticlimactic and kind of unrealistic for a book that was about war and high stakes. And like you said, Kaylee, just now, like characters who had accepted that fact, like they thought well and good that at least one of them was going to be dead by the end of this. So
actually, to that point, we didn't even lose any of Rain's like appointed advisors.
No, literally,
No.
or
We
Literally
didn't,
no
we didn't
one.
lose anybody. We didn't lose Jasmine. We didn't lose Vale.
not even Jasmine. No.
Katara. No one.
I thought like Shirley Jasmine, because I was thinking like,
Yeah.
maybe like one final link to Vincent, kind of, and no, not even.
Nobody. Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
You're so YA right now.
Yeah.
Book so YA.
Giving YA. But yeah, so that's my hot take. We kind of already talked about it. In terms of pour over, I'm just pouring over Aurea and Rain's bond and kind of what it means for the rest of the series. And while I don't like the fact that Rain was resurrected again, I am interested to see how their kind of bond progresses, and specifically not for their relationship, because I'm sure we won't get as much of that. And I'm not sure if timeline wise, like if we're going to keep progressing or if it's going to be different timelines. I don't know. But if it is the same timeline, I'm interested to see kind of how the House of Night progresses and what their bond means for their kingdoms or courts or whatever. So,
do we know, does this mean, Aurea will have Asterisk now, and Rain will also have Night Flame?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Like, did they
I thought we had talked about she always had Asteris.
I didn't think she did, because they make so many distinctions throughout the book of like my Nightfire and his Asterisk. I still don't understand the difference fully, honestly.
I'm honestly not sure.
One seems pushy, and one is lame.
Yeah, it does mean that they get each other's powers. So,
interesting.
The Coriatis bond means that. Yeah.
I hope we get one cool fighting scene where, because you know how we always talk about when they're fighting, they always are like, oh my god, we move so in sync, like we're back to back. I hope we get some kind of cool scene where it's like they're flingy, swirly around each other, you know? Something.
That would be cool.
Yeah, I don't know, something. Anyways.
You
You know what I'm talking about. The classic swirly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool. So then we have our ratings and our favorite parts.
Oh, yes.
So for me, I'll just start. I would give this a 4 out of 5. And honestly, it's kind of hard for me because I have problems with both the introduction and the conclusion of the book, but the meat of the book is so good. Like, I'm just struggling so much with it. So it's like, realistically, it's probably like a 3 of 5 in total, but the meat is so good. And I don't know what Carissa, if you're listening, we know you're listening. We know you're an avid listener, okay? I don't know what you eat or drink before you write the little interludes that are like the past lore. That shit is so good. More of that. I don't know. The writing that you, as if I'm still talking to Carissa, the writing that she does in those interludes is so good. And
I've heard that some people don't like that, which I guess, again, it's more of a pacing thing. I know for some people, which, like, fair. But I think that's, like, I agree. That's when her best writing, like, shines through. I think the writing itself, like, even if you don't like the pacing of that and, like, how she does those reveals, I think the writing in those sections is, like, her best.
I love it. Every time I saw some italicized text, my rapt attention was ready because I was like, ooh, there's about to be some good stuff. Anyways, so for all those reasons, averaged her out to a 4 or 5. Could have been a 5 though. I could have been a 5. And then for my favorite part, I'm a hoe for like the scenes where like a warrior is like hurt and then the love interest has to like patch them up, and it's very like intimate in like a non-intimate way, but it's so intimate. So the scene where Rain is helping Aurea heal her wings, there's so much leading up to it, but it was so good and so it was really, really pivotal for their relationship as a whole to kind of like give them the path forward that they needed to kind of like come back together. So love that. That was my favorite part.
Yeah. That's a good one.
My rating, I give this book a 4.5 out of 5. After talking about everything, I probably will move it down to a 4 out of 5. Mostly just because of Rain's resurrection at the end. I found that really annoying. But I also wrote that I loved the interlude bits a lot, and I loved the writing. I also thought the characters were really fleshed out, which doesn't happen a lot in books like Araya and Rain. I thought they were really fleshed out. So yeah, and then my favorite part was when Araya interacts with Nyaxia and Acacia at the end. I kind of, I know that you guys feel differently, but I did like that scene. I enjoyed it. And I found Nyaxia's dialogue really interesting, and I would love to see more of Nyaxia, like in the next books.
Yeah, she's a slay.
Yeah.
I kind of wish she was the main character for the next duology.
Me
no
too.
hate to Nisha, but
or we get like her backstory like in full. I would love that.
Well, because I really... Sorry, go ahead, Abby.
Oh, no, go ahead. You're good.
I was just going to say, I really love, like, the tidbits we get from her, mostly in the first book, where it's, like, she started out and, like, all the other gods and goddesses treated her like she wasn't shit, and then she had to, like, claw her way to the top. So I'd love to see, like, what her relationship actually looks like in that, like, political sphere that she's in. And if it is, like, she has to act hard to, like, stay respected, but really she's like kind of a softie, because also would that not be just so poetic for... I feel like not all, but like a lot of the vampires, especially the main characters we see, they're like, I don't like doing this, but I have to gain the respect of my peers. And so it's like, y'all, just if you would just agree to respect each other, please, we could have such a better time, please.
So much easier. Yeah. No, well, and I was gonna say too, I after this I'm gonna look up and see what the novella, if we know what the novella is going to be about. But I think that would be a perfect use of novella, to have like novellas about the different goddesses. I would eat that up.
Yeah.
I think that.
It's about Lilith.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. I loved Lilith. I guess.
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah,
she's cool.
Sure.
Cool. Sure. I would love goddesses one. So,
please,
Carissa,
please, Carissa, do a spin-off series.
One of our loyal listeners here. Please. Okay, so I also gave this one a 4. I think that the characters progressed really well. Like I said, I'm not only a fan of like the more war-focused fantasy books, but I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was really well done. I stand by the fact that I think Carissa has some really beautifully written parts in these books that a lot of other fantasies, even if they have great plot and great characters, don't necessarily have these very like poetic kind of sections, and I love that she does that. But yeah, same issues with pacing in the beginning and the end. If it weren't for that, it'd be a 5 for me. And then my favorite part, I just love seeing the different scenes where kind of Araya is kind of learning about her own power and kind of leaning into that. So like we talked about earlier, I love the scene where she finally kind of wields the sword, where she kind of finds the various kind of magical objects. And I think my favorite might be when she learns to fly. We talked about that earlier, but it's just good for... It's simple, but it's good for so many reasons, for her character development, for her and Rain, and for her own reflection on her and Vincent's relationship. So I think it's just it's a cute, sweet scene. But
it's true. And for the record, you guys, you know how I hate an overpowered main character. I wasn't even that bothered by it this time. I only rolled my eyes a little when she popped out her wings, okay? Just only a little. So that's a big statement for me. So Carissa really did that. She did that.
That's a little win.
Yeah. My hater
also,
energy.
Quick note, I just want to note for this podcast, it's all fun for us, the arguing and everything. When we argue about Vincent, it's all fun for us. Like, we love each other. So
it's
true.
We're planning on going to fight outside after this.
Yeah.
Meet us in the parking lot.
Yeah. Me and Kaylee are gonna go at it.
Going at it. I'll be a rep. Yeah.
Kaylee and Abby understand that I need this to heal my daddy issues, because having like a temperamental father that actually loves a child blows my mind. They know what this means to me.
If you don't listen to either of these episodes, just skip to this part. Vincent. That's it.
Just Vincent. In summary.
Yeah.
That's the tea.
That is the tea.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Most controversial character, Vincent.
The words of Beyonce, you know you that bitch when you cause all this conversation.
So fucking true. So fucking true.
That bitch, for better or for worse. So.
All
Anyway.
right. That's enough. That's enough, everybody. I feel like we could talk about this for hours, but if we've said our piece for this episode, we can feel good knowing that we got all our hot takes out. That is the tea on the serpent and the... No, it's not the serpent and the wings of night. This one is the Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. This is the second book, guys. Be aware. Please read along with us for the upcoming episode on Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is the second book to Fourth Wing. If you're listening to this episode the day it comes out, it is the release date of Iron Flame. So please go get it so that you can listen along with us next Tuesday. You can also stay up to date with the latest tea that we have on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, or on all the things at Spill the Novel Tea. And then please, while you're there, let us know what have you been pouring over and what's your hot take, and why do you love Vincent? I want to know, because I know you're out there. Someone else join my side. I know you're there.
Someone take Maddie's side on this.
Please, I need help.
We'll have the comment section.
Okay, that's it, everybody. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.